I was born on November 4th, 1990 to David and Gloria and Levy, and I was born in Georgetown, Illinois, where my dad was serving as a youth pastor at a small Baptist church.
Like most people, I was born at a very young age on December 1st, 1989 to Jesse and Rebecca Huang. They were students at Faith Baptist Bible College and Theological Seminary at the time.
So as a pastor's kid, I grew up always going to church. Whenever the doors were open, I was there. I was the little kid that ran around in the back and felt like I owned the space.
Both of my parents were believers. My dad was a second-generation believer, and my mom's family had been believers for several generations.
But just going to church and hearing Bible stories and knowing Bible verses didn't mean that I was really a follower of Jesus or that I really trusted Christ as my personal Savior.
Even though my parents were saved, that did not make me a Christian. I was a sinner just like anybody else, and from a young age I knew that I needed Christ as my Savior, that I needed His payment for my sin.
It wasn't until I was a little bit older that I asked my mom what it meant to be saved, and she took me aside and she showed me Bible verses that I already knew, that I was a sinner and that there was a penalty for my sin, and that penalty was death. And I understood. I knew I was naughty. I had that part down.
I could not do anything good enough to get myself to heaven. Ephesians 2:8-9 says, "For by grace are you saved through faith, and that not of yourselves, it is the gift of God, not of works, lest anyone should boast."
Two Bible verses that my mom shared with me were Romans 3:23 that says, "We have all sinned and come short of the glory of God. We missed God's perfect mark." And Romans 5:8, "But God demonstrated His own love toward us, and that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us." So Christ died for me even though I was a sinner and I did bad things. He did it because He loved me.
I can still remember the night when I finally talked to my parents and said that I needed to be saved. I remember kneeling at my bedside with them and praying and asking Christ to make His payment on the cross good for my salvation, to forgive me of my sins and to put me into an eternal relationship with Him.
And she explained that Christ took the penalty for my sin and that He died on the cross and paid my debt, and that He rose again to give me a forever home in heaven. And I trusted Christ as my Savior. And I knew it wasn't that my dad was a pastor. That didn't earn my way to heaven. It wasn't that I knew Bible verses or Bible stories. It was that I made a personal decision to trust Christ as my Savior.
A couple years later, I was baptized by my grandpa, and so that was a special privilege for me.
When I was 7 years old, my dad was a senior pastor at a small church in Indiana, and he baptized me in a lake. My favorite part about that was that he practiced first in Lake Michigan because he had never baptized before. But he taught me that baptism was a picture of showing that I was part of God's family and that I wanted everyone else to know that.
In junior high, when I was at camp, I dedicated my life to Christ to follow God however He wanted me. I wasn't sure if that would be into missions or as a pastor, but I was willing to go wherever He wanted me to go.
When I was a freshman in high school, a missionary came from Indonesia, and he was talking about how we shouldn't be afraid of telling other people about Jesus. He talked about the verse 2 Timothy 1:7, "For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of love and power and of self-control." And he talked about how we don't have to be afraid, that God is with us and that He will help us each step of the way. So after that message, I dedicated my life to missions and however God would direct.
My relationship with Christ gives me hope for the future. It gives me purpose for living today and everything I do. And ultimately, if I have a good relationship with Christ, it will affect the relationship that I have in marriage.
Since I trust in Christ, I understand that I want to give my life back to Christ in the way that I live. I want to honor and glorify Him. I want to follow and do what God says, not just because it's a list of do's and don'ts, but because I want to have a deeper relationship with Jesus Christ. I want to know Him because I'm going to spend eternity with Him someday.
My greatest desire for anyone I know, whether that's my friends, my family, the people I meet at the grocery store, is that they would also know Christ as their Savior, and that someday we would be able to spend eternity together with God in heaven.